Well, one thing that's cool about games is that they can change the music on the fly based on what's happening. And some games take advantage of that better than others. Yeah. But like some of the early simpler examples I think are really effective are like puzzle games. Like there's a puzzle game called Tetris Attack. Are you familiar with that one?
Tetris Attack, yeah.
When you're dying in that game, the music changes.
It speeds up, yeah.
And it starts playing this like evil theme, like, oh man, you might die. And like, I sweat when I think about that song still.
Yeah.
It's same thing now, like with Tetris 99. Did you play much of that?
I love Tetris 99.
Tetris 99 is great. The theme changes as you get closer and closer.
Yep.
You get to that top 10 and it's playing like the most panic version of whatever theme.
Right.
And it really does get your blood pumping in a way that like just playing alone would not. YUNKJunk! Hey everyone, this is Tubby Talk here at YUNKJunk Studios, and as usual, I'm Chris and
I'm Steve.
Yeah, and today we got a special guest. This is Paul Adams.
Yes. My name is Paul. I am also known as the Gamersician, rapper, producer, YouTuber, and I'm super happy to be here with the fellas and talk a little bit about games and game music.
Yeah, so I figured, having somebody of your caliber here, we were like, let's talk about some music in video games, like everything you love, right?
Yes, it is, because just in case it wasn't clear, gamer plus musician equals Gamersician. So there you go. And it can be a little confusing, I know, but there you go.
Yeah, you should definitely check out his channel. He's got a great YouTube channel. It's filled with all kinds of videos, but a lot of the ones we were watching the retrospectives on some of the games, and also just you got clips of your music, which is fantastic.
Well, thank you. Yeah.
Which came first, the love of games or the love of hip hop?
Oh man, that's actually that's a great question. So I would say my love of hip hop preceded my love of games by just a little bit, but they kind of grew at the same time. And honestly, I was a gamer well before I was a musician though. So, but the love was always there, and I've always enjoyed music and creating music and playing a lot of great games. So that's how I ended up with this channel.
That's awesome.
And I know that for me, music is a huge part of games, and this came to light actually, I guess in the 90s. I started playing like N64 games and GameCube games, and I started getting into real music, like bands and CDs and stuff. And so I started muting my TV when playing video games.
And listening to your CD.
And listening to my CD. And I enjoyed that for a while. But then I realized like I didn't know any of the music from a lot of these games. And a lot of the people love the music from the games that I skipped.
You won't play Chrono Trigger without the music.
No,
man. I have a big problem with that.
Yeah, that would be a big problem. No, way later. I'm saying the N64.
Gotcha.
And later.
Gotcha.
But I think it was a mistake because it cuts out a huge element of these games.
For sure, man. I mean, like when I think about some of my favorite moments in games, if you take the music out of it, it just like doesn't hit the same. It's a lot like if you listen to a film on mute or whatever. It's just part of the experience is hearing how the music kind of crescendos and how it ebbs and flows as action happens on screen. And I just think it's super important. But it's funny, like I didn't exactly do that, but I would sometimes take my favorite game soundtracks and I would have a CD player next to the TV. So if I didn't like the game's music that I was currently playing, I just listen to like Street Fighter Alpha's music or like whatever, So
yeah, and I remember the era too, especially with I think it was PlayStation 1 and Sega Saturn. You could do it with. Yeah. We can put in your own music CD during gameplay. You can open the cover and pop in your own CD and just, groove out.
Yeah, and it seemed like you were a magician at the time. It was like, I just hacked in this music, basically.
Right. It's like this. And a lot of fun was like trying to find the music that just didn't make sense with whatever you're playing. It was like, let's see if I put this on while I play this very dramatic scene in Metal Gear Solid or something,
Play Panzer Dragoon Saga and put on DMX's The Stark Hell is Hot.
Like, man, that's crazy. You're wild for that, for sure.
I had a moment like that. Sometimes you do that and it fits weirdly, though.
Yeah.
Like, I remember the first time I played Halo in college. It was on PC, and we built these computers from trash pick parts, right? So we're in my dorm room, crammed around. I built my first computer, trash pick parts, trash pick monitors. We're playing Halo on a LAN. And we put on, for some reason, the Postal Service, which is a really mellow, like weird, like slow album for anyone who's not familiar, but it fit really well.
Yeah.
Like, and they were playing the song Recycled Air, and you're like in Halo on a space station, like jumping around shooting people.
Yeah.
Like,
Recycled air.
And Recycled Air. I'm like, oh, it totally, even though we are shooting each other and running each other in Jeeps, like Postal Service fit. And I still associate the game with that, even though it has nothing to do with it.
That's so funny. It's honestly, that's probably a channel idea. You should probably sit on that. That's a great idea. But
edit it out. Edit it out.
Yeah. But it seems like there are these moments in games that are just like, when you think about that moment in the game, it's just tied directly into it. Like when I think about one of my all-time favorite games, Castlevania Symphony of the Night.
Oh yeah.
The original Metroidvania, you know, it's like just hearing that guitar right as you're entering the castle, like you just know, you just associate that moment. And I'll never forget just the first time I loaded that game up and booted it up and was, oh, I'm here. I'm in the castle. I'm Richter Belmont. Let's do this. I got the whip out. I was ready to go. So there's so many instances of great music just elevating great games, you know?
And that one, I think it was a CD soundtrack as well, coming off of that, right? So it was real musicians, not MIDI.
Was it 24-bit sound or something?
Yeah,
24-bit sound.
But that's the thing. Like, there's a lot of games that go with MIDI, and the MIDI works great too. Like, I think it's a different flavor for both.
Yes.
Right.
Yeah, and I was actually just watching a video about the way that the Genesis and the SNES differed in how they created music. And it's so interesting. It's now we're at a point where, I mean, it's just the music now. There wasn't synthesis and like these different ways that these
like the actual
consoles had to like make the sounds. It was like actually the whole bleeps and boops aspect of game music is largely gone because you're just hearing music as it exists.
Like you're closer to true notes, or if not true notes now versus you know, a bastardization of what music sounds like. You know, in a good way. Right.
And it's so funny how the limitations of that type of music now it's like sought after. It's really interesting. You asked about my love of hip hop, and it kind of runs in parallel because when you think about the original greats of hip hop, from the 80s and 90s, they had these little samplers, right? These little samplers that had, you know, maybe 10 seconds worth of recording to sample to use for an entire length of a song. So these artists got really good at doing so much with so little. And now when I sit down at my computer to make music, whether it's sampling or whatever, I have infinite, like I can hit
terabytes and
record
terabytes
and just walk away for days and it would just keep going. So I have this like, it's harder in a way because you have so much access to tools and things that it's like analysis paralysis. You don't know where to start or like where to go. But then you have artists like, you know, Yuzo Koshiro, who did all those great Streets of Rage soundtracks with 5 channels of sound and just like having to synthesize everything to kind of sort of sound like an actual sound. It's crazy.
Yeah, wasn't like one of the Genesis like sound channels just like a simulated hi-hat? Like that was the only thing you could do with it.
Yeah, it was like just and it was like that's all it did. And he had so few resources, but I have every Streets of Rage soundtrack on vinyl and I still just
listen to
jam out to those. They're so good. They're so good.
And I think there's something to be said for limitations inspiring creativity. I know when I'm doing something creative, I thrive with limitations. Like I like to impose them.
Yes.
Like it's the only way I move forward. Yeah. One of the most creative things, most fulfilling creative things I did recently was design our 5th year anniversary t-shirt. And it was pixel art. And I was like, I want to use as few colors as possible. It's a t-shirt. So I was like 2 colors. The whole thing's 2 colors and it's very low resolution and I'm going to blow it up to be, but it was awesome. Like it makes you think much more creatively, I think. Like you got to figure out problems. And if I'm not solving problems, then it's just like you got a box of toys and you're like, what do I play with first?
Exactly. Like I often will do exactly that with music making. I'll say, okay, you're only going to get to use 3 instruments, or you're only going to have this amount of time to work on this section. Cause you just like stare at this screen and you just are just overwhelmed by options and decisions, and they didn't have the options or decisions. It was like, we got to do this thing, and it has to be done concisely because we don't have a whole lot of space and ways to make this sound away.
Yeah. Are there any gaming soundtracks that jump out to you when we think of like notable gaming soundtracks?
Notable gaming soundtracks. I don't know. It's tough because as you guys were talking earlier about, you have just such strong memories of the gameplay moments with the music behind those moments.
Yeah.
And I find that for whatever reason, there's not a lot of games where it lasts in my brain. Like if I'm playing the game from the beginning, I'll remember. The same thing with movies for me though. Like I'll remember the score of a movie, like score parts I like at the end, as I watch the beginning. I kind of remember the movie again as I start watching it.
Right.
And pulling it from the ether in my brain, I'm just like, I know this music's in this movie. I don't know where it goes.
Yeah.
So like gaming is kind of like that too. Like if I just sit down and play a Street Fighter, I suddenly remember every character's stage music, exactly, all the entire tracks of each, 1,000 stage music. I'll know by heart since I start playing Street Fighter, period. Right. If I'm not playing Street Fighter, I'm like, I think that was his music. Or was this Ken's theme? And then as soon as I start playing, I'm like, oh yeah, Ken's theme.
Oh yeah, right.
Yeah.
Right.
But one that always stuck out to me very strongly was Battletoads.
Yeah.
The first stage, because I played it so often.
As we all did.
Yeah.
Because it's one of the hardest games that's ever existed.
But yeah, the first stage soundtrack was great. The pause music was great. I would pause it just to listen to that. Yeah, I did try to sample it once because I was going to try to use it for like a beat for I was trying to learn how to rap.
Hey.
I suck at it. Didn't work. But I was like, I'm going to use that as a basis, as backbeat. And I was like, it's not working because it's a little bit too fast. And my brain's just garbage at that. Like every time I try to freestyle, I come up with like 3 lines and don't have a 4th line.
Listen.
And I have to give up right there.
Listen, I often compare freestyling and like written rap, which I'm terrible at freestyling as well, to like written rap.
Don't be wrong. I'm terrible at written rap too.
Though it's like very much like okay, if you play soccer, you would expect that you would do pretty well at track, but yeah, they're both running a lot, but they're not exactly the same. It's like a little different. So
so like I think like actually tying that back to what I was saying earlier, like I think that's kind of why my mind puts together certain gameplay aspects with certain musical aspects, like in a fighting game,
right?
Because it's more freestyle, it's more free form. You're limited to a certain set of commands,
right?
It's not like a platformer where you play Mario, you run to the right. I know if there's a run to the right, I know what part of the theme it'll be on,
right?
During part of the stage. I know I'm hopping over the first pit as it goes do 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 do. So I'll remember that as I'm playing. But like something in Street Fighter because my brain's kind of random in the first place, so I don't like being stuck too rigidly into gameplay.
Right.
I think that's kind of why I fell off for like a lot of turn-based RPGs. But something like a Street Fighter game, I'm like, I could just decide to come in and be, choose violence this morning and do a bunch of low sweeps. But for some reason, like that makes it stick in my head. Like, oh yeah, that time I was playing Street Fighter Alpha and I beat this guy with Akuma when I was playing as Sakura, who I wasn't that good with. I remember the theme.
Right.
Akuma's theme during that stage. Yeah. And I was just like, this feels right. This feels right in the moment. And thinking about it, I'm like, what was his music again? Yeah, so I don't know why my brain doesn't connect the two.
It's so powerful when it ties into that gameplay, though. Like, it's like a core memory is formed right at that moment.
So the Battletoads is always, I just think about it right now. I'm like, I know exactly how the music is. I know, like that memory for some reason fully formed.
Yeah.
Probably because Battletoads is hard. You have to play first stage a lot, but it's also one of the first games that I bought with my money. Yep. And I was like, I get to play this game forever and never get past the 6th stage because of stuff.
Well, one thing that is cool about games is that they can change the music on the fly based on what's happening. And some games take advantage of that better than others. Yeah. But like some of the early simpler examples I think are really effective are like puzzle games. Like there's a puzzle game called Tetris Attack. Are you familiar with that one?
Tetris Attack, yeah.
When you're dying in that game, the music changes.
It speeds up, yeah.
And it starts playing this like evil theme, like, oh man, you might die. And like, I sweat when I think about that song still.
Yeah.
It's same thing now, like with Tetris 99. Did you play much of that?
I love Tetris 99.
Tetris 99 is great. The theme changes as you get closer and closer.
Yep.
You get to that top 10 and it's playing like the most panic version of whatever theme.
Right.
And it really does get your blood pumping in a way that like just playing alone would not.
Yeah. And I just think like as game music has continued to develop, you see more of the kind of the score type of aspects to games. And one of the things I love about like modern game music development is that you have these artists that realize, okay, when you're watching a film, right, there's only one way a film can play out. But when you're playing The Last of Us or you're playing whatever you're playing, there's a million permutations, and they have to kind of consider like how that can all work together and kind of help to build the game up. So I love when a game has like dynamic music that kind of shifts, like when you're seeing in like Metal Gear Solid, all of a sudden music changes, and like as you get closer to hiding again, it like fades out, and then the other like song blends in, and it's
layers
like,
to it and things like
and it just really, like when it's done really well, it can really kind of heighten tension. It can kind of let you know like, oh man, I'm almost out of the way, I'm good, or I'm in hiding now. It's really unique to games in the sense that like you can't do that in a movie. You just get what's on the screen. Yeah.
Metal Gear's another great example of that, because you get discovered and sirens are going off and the music changes and your heart goes crazy.
Yeah, you can feel it. Yeah, you can feel it. I haven't played Final Fantasy VII Rebirth yet, but I was talking with some friends about it, and apparently it does a really interesting. It has over 400 music tracks, and the reason it does is because whatever permutation of your party, they'll have theme elements for that character in the battle theme, and like how you like bring people in and out. It sounds like it's intense. I love stuff like that.
Like, you mean like if you bring like Tifa in your party, it'll have like part of Tifa's like leitmotif or something, and if you bring Barrett, it'll be different.
Leitmotif, nice word.
Yes.
I looked for a place to put that in, and I was like, where can I plug it in?
Leitmotif. I know this will come up. I know it'll come up. Oh, that's my chance.
That sounds also. It sounds like kind of an evolution of, I remember first in Mario World, when you jump on Yoshi, you get a drum track behind it. He's got the bongo drums going. You're like, oh, I'm riding Yoshi. A lot of people never realized that was happening, but you're just like, oh, Yoshi, like you feel it. You don't necessarily, you're not aware of it, but it's there.
And with your point, you start to associate. It's like, it's about associating certain sounds and certain kind of things with a character. And like over time, those things become so transcendent. Like when you were talking about Street Fighter, Guile's theme, like the second that comes on, and all these years later, they rarely mess with Guile's theme because it's so like well known and well received for all these years. You know, like 30 years of the same song, but nobody gets tired of it because it's like, that's Guile. That is Guile. It is him. You know, it's like that's the character in the music. So
like I always appreciated that Ryu's themes almost always incorporate I don't know the name of the instrument, like that strings instrument. It's like a drum and a guitar at the same time. I don't think it's a shamisen, but the Japanese instrument. Because it has like a hollow string sound. But because like even like in Street Fighter 6, he has like a more, if I remember, again, it's not in front of me, so give me a grain of salt. But I'm pretty sure that his current theme has more like, it's kind of like a breakbeat element to it, kind of, but it's still that like shamisen like sound like in the breakbeat. And I was like, I love how they incorporated that, because he's older, but he's also getting the storyline's getting more hip.
Yes.
Like Chun-Li buys him like a cool
jacket. Dude, I love Street Fighter 6. I love what they did with it. I'm glad that because that's a good opportunity to talk about one of my favorite soundtracks of all time, Street Fighter 3 Third Strike. And one of the, like, oh my God, I literally sit around. If you looked at my Spotify, I have a video game soundtrack playlist where I just add songs. I bet probably 70% of Third Strike is on there because it's just like, one of the things with Street Fighter 6 that they did was they clearly were like, okay, people love Third Strike. They're like kind of pining for that like hip hop kind of inspired like jazz fusion type of sound, and they really ran with it with the look of the game and the like paint splashes and all that stuff. It has a lot of like that like b-boy like, yo, what's good, like
that's what I always love playing in the arcade because of that, especially because of the music.
I
never got to play it as much as I wanted to because that's when arcade died, unfortunately.
Yeah, that was like right at the era.
Yeah.
It was like,
same at home. Yeah.
Well, the Street Fighter was fascinating that because like it started out, it's a Japanese game and it comes to the States and everyone loves it and it's a huge phenomenon and it catered to the street, right? Like a lot of urban youth really got into it. I know Steve and I used to go after school downtown.
Just play all the Street Fighters, whatever Street Fighter permutation it was.
And so it felt like, it didn't necessarily cater to that, but then it started to, right? And that's full force in Street Fighter 6. It's like everything's graffiti and it's all hip hop and it's like, this is what it should be, right? Like it's playing to its base.
Yes, yeah, 100%. And like, I just feel like, especially in fighting games, music is so important because you're like, it's kind of what helps you kind of get into the rhythm of a fight. So like on a side note, I also am a martial artist. So I've been training for about 25 years and there's a martial art called capoeira.
Yeah.
And it's a music-based like rhythmic martial art.
Eddie Gordo.
Eddie Gordo from Tekken, and I trained in that for a few years. And like as a musician and like a martial artist, to have that like rhythm and the music moves you, and you kind of move to the beat. And when I play fighting games, or even when I train, like a lot of times I'll train to music, and I use that as the rhythm for training and everything. So when I play a fighting game, especially, it's like really cool to see how they kind of understand, like, okay, when I'm going up against somebody, you're kind of using that a little bit to inform you on like how to move, when to go. And
like use that like as a focal point, like as a place you can focus your energy.
Right.
That's away from the anxiety of trying
to
figure out you're planning for attack. Yeah. Like that's
really
that's
cool.
what I tend to use it. Like, I get into the mindset of, okay, I'm listening to this theme. I'm in the groove. I can't say I don't fight along to the music if I can, because again, my brain is random like that. I'm like, okay, wait, no, I can't attack now because there's a gap in the music. Yeah, it's like 1, 2, 4. I should be attacking on 3. I should be pressing attack. But I'm like, no, I'm going to wait because it seems cooler.
You're like, all right, right on the drop, right on the 1.
And then I got my ass beat, and I'm like, okay, I should have just pressed the attack. But to me, it was cool in the moment.
Yeah. And now I just want to go to an arcade and play Street Fighter. Did you play fighting games in arcades when you were coming up?
Yes. Oh my goodness. So we're about the same age. I'm guessing.
We're 41.
41. I'll be 38 this year. So
nice.
So arcades still existed.
Yeah. 100%. And man, a lot of my formative years were spent at the Cincinnati, Ohio Timeout in Tri-County Mall.
Oh yeah, Timeout's out there.
Yeah. And man, I would play X-Men. I would play, of course, like any Marvel game. I'd play any fighting game I could. I was big into Street Fighter and Tekken.
So you're into the scene of you slapped your quarter on your fair share.
And people knew when I was coming. They said, "Oh no, it's Paul. He's pretty average, but." Yeah,
but he's here all the time. Yeah, he's always a match.
He's always here. He's always here. So yeah,
that's what we used to be. We show up to our local arcade, the Spaceport.
Yep,
down on Chestnut Street in Center City, and we'd just show up, and there was always like there was the crew that was always there.
Yeah,
and so we'd show up. We were in the middle of the pack. We weren't the best. We definitely weren't the worst. We always had our own. But yeah, we would put our quarters down, and they'd be like, "Oh, it's these kids again," and we come and give them a fair fight. Yeah, we had Captain Business. What's that?
Corporate America.
Corporate America, yeah.
Yeah, Steve Guy.
Yeah,
we never know these guys'
Captain
names.
Business.
Actually, what was it, for 8th grade graduation or was it high school? Must have been high school graduation. Chris actually made me an illustration I still have to this day because it's beautiful. It's like all the regulars at the arcade, like with their personification. It looks like a Street Fighter like character selection screen kind of.
We didn't know any of these guys' names in real life.
Yeah,
like
no.
we just
don't know anything about them.
We probably played them 100 times.
I'm sure.
There's a sure. Guy.
Unless they're murderers, we don't know.
Well, yeah, they also could have been that. So
yeah, but a lot of them seemed to be like business guys on their breaks. They'd come down and play against high schoolers, and
but Corporate America was the one guy that he had like the blade haircut.
Yeah,
and he had this like 3-piece suit. And he would come down, he just stately put his porter down and be like, And he would come up and he would lose because he wasn't that good. But he was there like every day.
He
on
was
his lunch
there,
break.
man. He was getting the reps in. The reps matter, you know.
We're the guy that every time you put in a command for the super combo, and the screen freezes. He's like, "Oh, this is gonna suck. This is gonna suck." He was saying like every other game, and then
so this is gonna suck, guy. Of course,
right? Yeah. Well, yeah. You have to like name. You have to give people their appropriate names based on who they are and how they present themselves. Because when you're at an arcade or like any place where it's like not to talk or whatever, it's like so funny.
You're talking with your buttons,
right?
Your analog buttons. Yeah.
You only really recognize them in context. You know, like when I walk into Tubby Robot and I see you guys, I'm like, oh yeah, ice cream guys. And when I'm just walking down the street, I'm like, who's that guy?
I don't remember. It's like, oh yeah, maybe the ice cream guy, but you gotta be in there.
I'm like, I don't recognize him out of this context.
Oh, yeah, and back then, like we were worse at socialization too. Like we were nerds in a nerdy high school.
Yeah,
so
we talked
like,
to each other. We didn't talk to them.
Right.
Yeah.
But yeah, I'm hoping I was known as the Shotokan kid. That's always picking 3 Shotokans, Marvel Street Capcom 2, because I was Ryu, Ken Akuma.
Yeah.
Always like maybe throw a Dr. Doom in there if I was feeling spicy, but otherwise I'm like, no. Yeah. I didn't know any other advanced text, and now I look at people at Evo playing. I'm like, I didn't know he could do half this stuff. I just like Dr. Doom as characters. That's why I picked him. But no, I was always Ryu, Ken, Akuma.
You know, I just realized we were talking about music this whole time and fighting games, and I remember Marvel Superheroes versus Street Fighter.
Yeah,
that was my personal favorite. And they would play the theme of the character you were as they came in. Then I realized Marvel vs. Capcom 2. I was like, there's so many characters. Themes. They just played the general jazzy theme for everything. It didn't matter who was in. So that switch there is when we lost kind of custom themes for players, for characters.
Right.
Which I just really realized.
The reason why Marvel MSH versus Street Fighter is the superior game. Yeah, I think I also agree that's my favorite. It might not be the best one. That's my favorite.
So it's so funny, like looking back on this, because 3 years doesn't seem like a lot, but like I wasn't really playing competitive fighting games to that point yet like that. So like Marvel vs. Capcom 2 really was where I kind of really got into that that specific type of fighting game.
It totally makes sense, because on the timeline, we get 3 years later, absolutely. Like that is right in line.
Yeah. And like Marvel vs. Capcom 2, that character select screen, I'm gonna take you for a ride. Oh my goodness. Like, so like speaking of stuff out of context, if I came back to Earth, if I went back in time and I was from the future and I was like, show me your fighting game, and they played that, like I would think, like,
pull out a jazz fusion.
Yeah, I'd be like, what? What? You are lying. Boom, boom, boom. Like I have a little phase. I'd be like, this is not real. You know, like it's absurd.
You can play a demon. Yeah. You can play a robot sentinel.
Nah.
You can play a little
while listening to this
Riding Hood. Yeah.
I'm gonna take you for a ride. Did it? I'd be like,
That theme song, that whole soundtrack is fire though.
Fire.
It was great, but I remember even the time we were like, this is weird compared to what came before.
Yeah.
Like it was a left turn, and we were there for it, but it was a weird left turn.
If I remember correctly, and I might be making this memory up, sometimes my brain does that. I think if you put the Dreamcast in the music mode and put in the disc, you could listen to the tracks like as a music. I think you could do that, because you could do it with some games. With the Sonic game, Sonic Adventure, you definitely could. Yeah. I don't know if you could do it with Marvel vs. Capcom 2 though. I still have both those things. I should check it out when I get home. Yeah.
Go give it a try. I miss when games were like coming out on CDs and were still so small that they had like all this extra space on, and they were like, here's the entire soundtrack. My brother and I would play the Street Fighter Alpha soundtrack while like playing other games or just like hanging out all the time. And I really feel like that may have been where my love of just like randomly listening to video game music came from, because you know, prior to that, I loved music in games, but I don't think I ever kind of like sought them out to just like chill and listen to them.
Myself,
yeah, you know, it's like,
yes. No, okay.
Yeah, it was just kind of like a switch over. It was kind of just like, okay, now I guess I just enjoy game music, you know, casually.
Yeah.
But
yeah, because like the first time I had that moment of I can just listen to music in games is Chris had the Chrono Trigger soundtrack. I think, yeah. Didn't you get it from like Nintendo Power or something?
So what I got, if we're talking about the same thing, was the Play It Loud Volume 1 CD from Nintendo
that's what,
Power.
Okay, no, Nintendo Power.
So that was,
assortment. So the furniture had...
It had some Zelda,
on there,
it had
right?
Link to the Past, and it had Star Fox, it had F-Zero.
Oh, okay.
It had, I don't think it had any Chrono Trigger. It was all Nintendo first parties.
But yeah, but he loaned it to me once, and I was like, I can just listen to the music from Zelda on my CD player.
That was it.
Like,
worked
this
for
is
me.
awesome.
I mean, I guess it was brilliant marketing by Nintendo because they gave that to me for free. I didn't spend money on it. Like, I have a CD of game music. I'm like, I can listen to game music when I'm not playing games.
Yeah.
And I did a lot, and still do to this day. Like, but there's such a breadth of stuff out there.
Mm-hmm.
And I feel like in many ways, like it's usurped. Like people used to listen to like classical music. Classical music's great, but it's instrumental. It's really good for when you're trying to get something done.
Mm-hmm.
You want ambiance as opposed to like a story.
A lot of game music now is that for me. Like I was like, okay, I want to write code. I'm gonna put on some game soundtrack and just like zone in. Right.
What's your game soundtrack of choice when doing a difficult coding test?
Well, see, a good one actually, which she brought up, Crypt of the Necrodancer.
Yeah.
It has an amazing soundtrack, and it's just got that, like, it's got a steady beat the whole time because the game requires that steady beat.
Yeah.
And that is good for just, like, keeping your brain in the same place.
Like, nice metronome for you.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And like, when we were talking about how games are elevated by their music and, like, how games can kind of become the soundtrack by how you play them. Like that is probably one of the best examples. It's like that game, you can't play that game on mute because like you have to know the music.
I've tried before and it doesn't work yet.
Yeah.
That's what you try my own.
So I have seen people like play entire Souls games with like drum kits and random stuff. I want to see a speed run of
with
Necrodancer on mute. Someone pulls that off.
No beat indicator.
Someone pulls that off. I will pay for it. I will pay for it personally.
I wonder what's more impressive, beating Necrodancer on mute or beating Mike Tyson's Punch-Out blindfolded.
But I was about to say period, but yeah.
Yeah. Well,
right, period. Yeah.
Well, they did the blindfolded one in GDQ.
Because you need to tell, because Mike Tyson, the only way to beat him is use his tells.
Right.
The slight flashes before he hits you. Yeah.
Yeah, though kind of a similar thing because a lot of that game is like rhythm, it's like, okay, when they're about to throw, you just know, okay, I have one beat, I gotta move, I gotta go this way, I gotta go this way, I gotta go back, so probably similar, but I think Necrodancer might be harder because like just having no music,
you'd have to watch, I guess, the thing at the bottom.
Yeah, that's what I mean, but you can turn that off too. If you turn off the heartbeat monitor,
then it seems impossible.
Is there a thing about, is there an analog to perfect pitch, but for
I was gonna say you'd have to have like perfect rhythm, which I don't know if that exists honestly, but hey, if anyone has it, I want to see that YouTube video.
Well, and there's another series that comes to mind for like just great music to like work to. I know you love it. Mega Man.
Yes.
Like especially classic Mega Man.
Yeah.
Like Mega Man.
Yeah, like the soundtrack for the first three, I'm like, I can just listen to those and repeat forever. And
and I feel like a lot of that chiptune essentially, but it's also got a lot of like heavy metal influences pulled into that. But then a lot of them are kind of like dancing numbers too. It's got a lot of breadth.
I feel like for both of those though, because I also do the same thing in my head. I'm conflating how they originally sounded in the games, which I haven't listened to in a while, with the band The Megas, which
love the Megas,
which does covers of the Mega Man songs. I'm like, I never noticed the dancey influences in some of the tracks until they did their versions dancey, and I'm like, was it always there, or was it something that they added? But yeah, I just want to bring up the Megas really.
Yeah, the Megas.
I love the Megas.
They are one of my favorites of all time, and I want them to do more. And they did a Castlevania album, The Belmonts, which you may have heard, right?
I have.
Good. It's got that 80s kind of synth pop thing going on.
Yeah, I swore one of their tracks was used in the Castlevania animated series. It wasn't. They did like their own arrangement of Bloody Tears, but it sounded like the Belmonts version, and I was real happy for a minute. I was like, yeah, they got it in the game, in the show.
That was another moment where music really kicked in for me. Did you watch the Netflix Castlevania?
I did. Love it.
There really isn't much Castlevania music in it at all until you get to that climactic battle in Dracula's Castle, and they pull in Bloody Tears, and I almost cried.
It was beautiful. It was incredible. It was like
laid it in,
like I think the best uses of music are exactly like that. They kind kind of just like walk you along, and then they just chuck you. You know, you're just like, okay, we're here. This is the moment, and it just like hits you so much harder because they used a little restraint. It's like real easy. Like making music can become a real. You always want to use your latest tool, and you're like, you want to show off, but like music is also just silence too. There's a lot of like good music is not just the notes, it's the space between them. So it's like if you're constantly hitting us with like music left and right in games, it can get overloaded. So I love to have that little kind of like, oh, where's the Castlevania? Oh, there it is.
Yeah,
you know, it's like
it took like 8 episodes to get there, but it gets there, and it's like,
and it sneaks up on you too, because it sounds like the normal orchestral score until you start noticing. If you know the song, you're like,
right. You're like, is that a hint?
Yeah, and the whole time on screen they're wilding out, and he's doing all the crazy whip tricks, and Sifa's doing all the it's like, it's so emotional.
I actually have a question relating to like the way that modern game music is kind of like laid out. Do you guys like the fact that a lot of kind of current titles, when you're just walking around and stuff, there's not really game music playing usually? It's like just ambiance or like very light music. Whereas older games, it was like you almost always had some sort of track happening. Outside of very rare instances, I saw a Reddit post about this, how like it makes certain games seem very kind of like empty or devoid of personality because there's a general lack of music, except for like at the more heightened instances. Like, you guys into like the
I was thinking about that earlier, because I've been playing Dragon's Dogma 2, currently. And that it does a lot of that, exactly what you're saying. When you're walking around, there's not any music. And then when enemies show up, they start the enemy theme. Right. A version of the enemy theme has lots of like drums in it. So, and then when the enemies are defeated, it fades out. So like, okay, I'm done fighting because the music's gone. Right. I like it for a gameplay reason for that. I don't necessarily, I wish there was more music, more incidental music, more background music. But I do like it for the gameplay utility of, now I got to get ready to fight. Yeah, it's
it's a very modern method of like
but it feels
gameplay.
It feels very utilitarian to me.
Yes, like, okay, it's calming down, so fighting's over. I can walk around.
Yeah, but you can still have music outside of that too. Right. I guess that'd mean have to pay musicians more, and they don't want to
pay the music.
Well, they're still composing it, and it's there.
No, I mean, they have to pay them to make more music than they already are paying them to make.
See, I feel like something's lost personally. Like, I like having that hook, right? Even if it's like a low key hook. Yeah. I don't know. I'm a punk rock kid, so like, it's got to hit me over the head. And I grew up playing video games that NES games had like 30-second loops that you heard 1,000 times, and like the good games, you didn't get tired of it.
Exactly.
The bad ones, you did get tired of it. So like, I miss that, and I think that's part of the reason why, like in the N64 to GameCube era, I kind of stopped listening as much because it got more atmospheric. Right. I was thinking about this. What game was I playing recently? Well, a game that does it well, actually. I think like Half-Life 2. There's not a ton of music in that game in general, but when it kicks in for like a heated battle, like, it's very powerful. So it's kind of more like it's used sparingly, but when it's used, it's strong. Yeah. But yeah, I think that's maybe one of the reasons I never connected with Dark Souls.
Yeah, Dark Souls just like, you don't get music.
Yeah, there's no music. You walk around.
There's barely anything.
Except the boss battles are epic.
Yeah, the boss battles have like epic orchestrated music.
You have to get to them.
Yeah. Getting to them, you're just like, I mean, now one thing,
walk around in silence.
It would suck if you're listening to like you said, the music loop wasn't good and you kept dying because of the game. You die a lot. I don't want to keep playing this because I hate this music I have to listen to during the swamp scene or whatever. Right. But on the other hand, I'd rather have that option to just be like, oh, it's just dead.
Yeah, I feel like the best kind of way to do it is more like the in between. So one of the games that I love the music of is Celeste. And one of the things that I love about the music, so like as you move through the screens and you see like new gameplay elements happen, usually like new types of sounds and stuff come in and like builds the music up, and these chase scenes get more and more like aggressive and louder, and there's more music, and each character has their own type of instrument. So as they show up on screen, like this synth will pop up or whatever. And because you're dying a lot, you'll maybe hear the same portion of the music quite a bit, like in the background. But as you get far enough along, then things start to build up and you kind of hear that for a while. So it's like, yes, it is always playing some type of music, like almost always, but it's still constantly shifting and changing as things happen on screen. So it's like kind of not the same static loop that you would have in like the NES days or the SNES days where they had very limited sound space, but you kind of still have that same feel of it, plus more modern takes.
Yeah, they're really subtle with it. And it's cool because you feel it, but you're not necessarily aware of what they're doing, which is, some might argue, is like a real artist touch, right? Like it's there, it's making you feel things, but you're not like, oh, that's a guy.
Yeah, it isn't like bonk. Yeah, it isn't hitting you over the head. Like, okay, this is the new character coming in. Like, if you, so Lena Raine is the composer of that game, and she's absolutely incredible. But she talks about how each character has their own specific instruments. So like a specific synth sound or a specific piano. And yeah, she kind of weaves those in and out as those characters come in and off screen. So yeah,
I agree.
Like, you know, like if she made it like dynamic, or is it because of the gameplay style of Celeste? Like, it's pretty much scripted when these enemies will appear.
So it is scripted, like in the sense that it isn't dynamic, that there's a lot of different things that could happen, but she created it with the mindset of, okay, when this character comes on screen at this point, this will happen, or when this chase scene starts, this will happen. And it was just like a really, it kind of like solidifies moments of the game for you, because you associate that, like, oh man, like the second that chase music comes on, I gotta start running, I gotta start going because he's after me, or whatever the case is. And I just think
Shiro chasing
in that damn hotel.
Yeah, that's as far as I got. I got confused by the hotel part. And I was like, yeah, I don't know what I'm supposed to be doing. I'm doing it wrong.
I'm out. Yeah. So there are ways, but I think that works better in shorter games. It is harder with like 60, 70, 100-hour long games to have dynamic music, or to have music that is gonna repeat for the equivalent of 10 gameplay hours, you know. It's like,
like speaking of, like,
maybe it should be quiet.
To that point, like Baldur's Gate 3, I love that game. I played it for probably 150 hours total in one playthrough, and I realized there's like 3 songs you hear as you're adventuring, and one of them is his lyrics. It's a beautiful song, but every time I think about the game, all I think is that woman singing that the chords, the hook of the song, because she's saying it for 75 hours of my gameplay cycle.
I feel like when it has lyrics, you're more likely to get sick of it quicker.
Yeah.
Right? Like something about like your brain's listening to that and you're like, okay, I get it. Yeah.
So like I ended up, like, my brain ended up tuning out most of the music, but whenever she sings the chorus, it just snaps right back. Right to what she's singing.
It's like I'm having a flashback.
I'm like, she just sang this like a minute ago. It's like, no, it's been 5 minutes. You're just hearing the song on loop, and you tuned out the last 4 minutes of it. But
it's crazy though, because lyrics usually are a bad idea for a song that you'll hear a lot.
Often,
You know what series pulls it off so well that it's like ubiquitous with it. Persona is a great example of where they'll have a battle theme that has full rap verses that you'll hear over and over, and because these games are just maddeningly long. When I beat Persona 5, I was like, I loved the game, I really did, but I was like, you guys could have cut like 2 or 3 dungeons out. But anyway, like Last Surprise has a full lyrical ensemble, and I mean, you only really hear one battle theme for most battles, and it's that, and it's like, but it bangs so hard. Last Surprise bangs so hard.
So Persona 5 soundtrack. Like, I was listening to it last week at the shop. I had it on, and I put on the Persona 5 Royal soundtrack. And I didn't realize it was different. So I was waiting for that song to come up that you're talking about. And I'm like, why do I'm not hearing the song? I'm like, oh, it's a different soundtrack.
I haven't played Royal because I cannot recommit.
They changed up. I don't know if it's an addition to the original music, but they definitely had a whole OST worth of different music. But yeah, I was like, no, that original battle theme, I was like, I love it so much. I need to hear that in a loop. Like, I would listen to that all day. Like that.
Did you know that bass guitar is not a real good bass guitar on Last Surprise? Yeah, it's a VST instrument, which when I heard that, I was like, how? That's how, I mean, like as a bassist, like I used to be so blown away because he's just like doing all these incredible, runs and stuff. It's like, oh, actually I played it on a piano.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Like
I was like, what?
That explains it then, because how many thumbs do you have?
Right.
And where can I get some extra thumbs?
Seriously.
Well, that's what's cool. A lot of game music, they can put things into it that would be almost impossible to play as a human being.
Right.
I know there's a couple. Super Meat Boy is one of my other favorite
Super
soundtracks.
Meat Boy, yeah.
And that's just got it's great. I don't even know like what genres to say. Like sometimes it goes into like full on like metal, but there's a lot of times where it's just kind of like a low, like chill beat,
like a melodic type.
Yeah, I mean, you say like the first stage, like doom, 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 like that's kind of a more chill song.
Yeah,
but it keeps you bumping along.
Right.
But it's got this like guitar solo in When You're in Hell. That I've seen someone play on YouTube, but I'm like, I don't know if that guy has the same number of fingers I got. It's just incredible. It was done on MIDI, so like you can map it out, and I don't know if
you're not supposed to be able to play it on guitar.
Right, it wasn't made to be played on guitar.
Right.
And the composer actually, I think he came to that video and was like, hey, I didn't write this to be played on guitar. The fact that you're pulling it off is kind of nuts.
It's impressive. Yeah.
But it's cool that a lot of Mega Man songs do that too, where they'll just have this like solo that goes off into space really fast, and then it's gone. And they're just like, we threw it in because we didn't have to play it.
Right. No one had to actually play this. We threw it in meticulously.
And I think of that when Mega Man 2, the Heat Man stage, is pretty it's got this like guitar solo thing that happens in the middle, and it's just nuts. And the Megas, when they play it, they play that song you note half speed from the original.
Yeah, there's a reason.
There's a reason.
Whenever I have a very fast part in a song and I want to play it out, I will usually turn the tempo down a little bit. You can kind of cheat a little bit. You can speed it back up.
Let's say you turn it down, record it, and you speed it back up. So since Chris is wearing a Metroidvania shirt, Masters of Backtracking, do they actually do Master of Puppets with Zelda theme?
No,
this Metroid theme, or that's just the name of the album.
T-shirt. It's not even.
Not even an actual.
No.
What band am I? No, Metroid Metal is the band I'm thinking.
Yeah.
But anyway, I was thinking about music, bands that cover video game music or interpret video game music. I was wondering if either I want to talk about favorites, maybe, because most guys want to talk about my favorite. But I don't know if you guys want to talk about.
He's like, okay, now I'm gonna go.
What's your favorite, Steve?
You goes first. But I was just had this subject in mind from earlier. We were talking about because like I fell in love with hip hop first, listening to De La Soul's 3 for High and Rising. My brother had it. I wanted to listen to it more than anything in the world because he had it. My brother was the coolest. You're not as cool. You're still cool, but he used to be the coolest person ever.
Older brothers always get less cool. Trust me, I've one too, and he's really falling down on the tier
Sorry,
list.
Brandon, but yeah. And so like I would whenever he was playing video games, I would try to sneak a listen to that because he wasn't in his room when he was in the living room playing Mario. So up there listen to this album. So it's kind of like it's something I got to listen to illicitly. Not even in the house. My mom didn't ever listen on the radio, but I was like, I would listen to this album as curse words. That's one because De La Soul, but it's like has one curse word. I would listen to it. But then and then playing games, like I would always try to imagine like a mashup of like video game music with like somebody
like
rapping
or something. Yeah.
And I always thought that would be something fun. And then the first time I heard something that meshed that for me perfectly. I'll talk about that later. First, you guys. I don't know if you have any.
No, you can't do that.
Oh man, look at that.
I'm going to set it up, and I'm going to.
Yeah, he sets it up so he can spike it later.
Oh my god.
I can go because I have a lot of people that I really
Dr. Malone. Let's
really appreciate. Oh yeah, give and go, baby. I would say like when you said that, I have a feeling I might know the guy. Is it Mega Ran?
No, it's actually earlier. I do love Mega Ran, but it's a little bit earlier than that.
Yeah, I mean, he's great, and he's from Philly.
He's played at PAX East, apparently.
Yeah.
I think it's gonna be at WrestleMania.
Yes.
This year, yeah.
Yep. So I had a video that you guys may have watched on Hip Hop 50, and it was all about the influence of hip hop on gaming and gaming on hip hop and how they intermesh. And Rand's a great example of that. For me, the 8-Bit Band is a great example of kind of guys that take game music and make incredible stuff. What's his name? I am blanking on it.
What are some of the albums, some of the music?
He actually plays with the 8-Bit Band. I'm blanking. He like takes a lot of like older Sonic games and stuff, and he plays them like in all these different styles and everything. I'll have to look them up.
Yeah, but, I'm trying to pull it up now.
Yeah.
But they big band or?
Yes. Yeah.
Charlie Rosen? No, those are the members of the band.
I'll bring up one.
Yeah. You go.
So yeah, there's a lot. I love it when video game music's interpreted again through like live music.
Mm-hmm.
That's so fun. We already talked about the Megas. Again, one of my favorites. There's
Button Masher. He's great. He's really cool. You guys should definitely listen to Button Masher.
Yeah.
I'm not even familiar. I gotta listen to that. No.
Oh, you gotta listen to him. He's so good. He is what you were talking about with the guitar solos, what he can do on a keyboard, man. He's just like all over the place. Incredible. But yeah, sorry.
So one of the first like video game cover bands I was introduced to on like Napster. There was a band called Generic.
Never heard of Generic.
And then right after them came the Mini Bosses. You ever hear of the Mini Bosses?
I've heard of the Mini. Well, you told me about the Mini. You put me on the Mini Bosses.
And there's this big a rock like 4-piece set, but playing game music through that lens and just hearing it again. Like they did like the Mario 2, the whole soundtrack like on guitar, and I was just like, oh, that sounds really cool. Love that stuff. But then the guy who he hasn't done much recently, XOC. He did an amazing cover. My favorite of his is the Gremlins 2 NES soundtrack.
Oh, wow.
Which is
Gremlins 2.
Gremlins 2.
NES.
I couldn't tell you a single.
I remember some music from the Gremlins movie, let alone the video game.
So the video game was a Sunsoft game, and Sunsoft was sort of famous for having like really good music.
Yeah, like the Batman NES.
Like the Batman NES.
Yes.
Perfect.
So
crazy good.
They went hard on the soundtrack for Gremlins 2, and nobody remembers it except XOC. And he made a whole album, and it's
nice.
So dang good. And then he did a great version of Mario World, which I play at the shop a ton. Like he's got
okay, that's the one I've heard you play.
And he must play like 30 instruments. Like there's so many things going on in it, and he'll take a lot of those themes, reinterpret them in like a different style. So one of another, like, I don't know if it's my favorite album of his, but he's got one which is called The Beginning of the End. And all he does is he takes the intro jingles from like 50 different games and plays them in sequence, and then plays the ending jingles from all those games and plays them in sequence. So it's stuff like a lot of old games, like Ghosts and Goblins. In the beginning, it's got this little riff. So he does that, and then he'll play the ending. And then he'll play the beginning and the ending of like all these. So they're all like 6 seconds long.
Compressed, yeah.
But it's just fascinating to hear all this music. A lot of stuff from.
It sounds like the most esoteric thing I've ever.
Yeah,
super esoteric.
I love it.
It's great. I'm not saying I knock on it.
It's one of those times when you know somebody cared about this as much as you did.
Yeah,
you're like,
right.
you feel a little seen.
Yeah, man, he gets me.
Yeah,
he gets me. Yeah, like that's a big part of my channel is to, whenever I cover the game, I either try to make a song in that vein, or I'll sample a track from the game, or I'll kind of like reinterpret the type of music through like maybe like a hip hop kind of vein. One of my favorite songs off my latest album is called Chrono Chiller, and it's like a Chrono Trigger sample, which everyone will recognize, but it's then mixed with some live playing, and I played the drums on it and all that stuff. So I've always had an appreciation for like taking different influences and just kind of like, because that is hip hop, it's like all these different like can take jazz influence, rock
and
influence,
find
you
a way
can
to meld them together, and
you put it all
make
together
something
in a
new with
way.
it, yeah.
Exactly. So that's a lot of what I enjoy and what I like to do. But what I'm most excited to hear, this man set up a whole segment and sat here and said, okay, they're done talking. Now it's my turn.
Well, see, now
I want to hear you.
Might seem very mundane. Chris is talking about this esoteric, like almost artistic reinterpretation, replaying of the beginnings and ends of different video games experiences. And then Paul's over here talking about things that he's created himself, and he's interpreted, genres and other genres. He's putting the things he loves together. I'm like, oh yeah, I listened to 2 songs I liked a lot one time somebody made.
Well, now, who is it?
I'm not going to tell you anymore.
Oh,
so.
what?
Thank you for no. So the first one,
good night.
The first one I was thinking of, and now I don't remember which one came first, but they're both in late 90s, like 97, 98. The first one I remember I played when I found it on a mixtape on a bootleg stand, and Ron Gerard, I ran into school and I was like, Chris, you got to listen to this. It was Super Brothers by the Cocoa Brothers, a.k.a. Smith and Wesson. And I was so he took the Super Mario Brothers beat and just played it. Didn't even sample it, just played it.
The underground theme from 1-2.
Yeah, the underground stuff, and they're just rapping over it. And I'm just like, and like their style was like, they rap back and forth, like line to line. And I'm just like, this is an amazing interplay of 2 rap artists I like, and also over the Super Mario Brothers underground theme, which is already a banger. And then I don't even think they did much. They might have added some like extra bass or something, but it was they just rapped over it.
I love that.
And I was like, this is great. And I was like, hey, guys, gotta listen to this. Like the whole album was video game themed, but that was the best track.
Yeah.
There's one with Eminem rapping over like a Mortal Kombat menu selection screen.
I feel like I have heard that.
And like that one, I was like, that's pretty good. I didn't know Eminem. Nobody knew him at that time. So I was like, oh yeah, that sounded kind of cool. Whatever. That guy's not going anywhere.
He'll never be the most successful rapper of all time.
He'll never get into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. Never. But yeah, and then the other one was, I also ran into school and so I was like, hey, my friends, you gotta listen to this. It was Beanie Siegel on his first album. There's a song called Mac Man.
Yeah.
Which is, it uses the Donkey Kong theme and interpolates it. And it's thematically about him running basically a drug cartel against other video game characters. So the Mario Brothers are one of the other rival gangs.
Dude, I love Beanie Siegel.
Like Dig Dug, smuggles packages for him and stuff like that, under the earth.
Of course he does, because he can go
sets up this whole mythos.
Underground.
Yeah. So it's like this whole story is told over the no, not the Donkey Kong, sorry, it's the Pac-Man.
Right.
Main theme and then the death sound. And it was like, with the point, it was like a nice 10-second loop over and over again. But he rapped over it, made this weave this whole story over it. Yeah, and I was just like, hey, somebody who loves video games as much as I do, that knows all these references, can find a way to put them into a tale about selling drugs. But then but make it sound good. Yeah. And it's like on his debut album, like he could just went straight, like, I'm doing 10 tracks of just like hard gangster rap. And he's like, no, I'm going to do this song that nerds will get, nerds will appreciate. Yeah. And I'm hard enough to be like, I'm not a nerd. I can talk about nerd shit.
Right. I can say it.
With my first album. But I just remember falling in love with that. And I was like, this is like the best like fusion of these things I've ever heard to this point. I was like, it's still one of my favorite tracks. Let's do it all the time.
Yeah, I mean, so I was a rapper and a producer for like, I don't know, about 12 years. I have a few solo albums and I have a couple like group albums. I had a record label back home. And when I kind of stopped rapping, like I want to say my last album came out in 2016. And after that, I had a few other like little straggler projects where I was rapping on stuff of like other artists, but I hadn't really rapped consistently for a while. And one of the things that I have generally shied away from in rap music is like real like nerdcore rap. I love songs that'll reference games and stuff, but like rapping as a character and all that stuff, I just think like it's like super corny sometimes. And I just don't, I mean, like as not a rap purist, but as like a guy that prides himself as a rapper, like I'm like, this is kind of cheesy.
It feels a little performance-y.
Yeah. But on my last album, the one that I just put out in January for the channel, I have a song that is the Castlevania Luck Code. That is the title. So only
I was wondering what that was
real
a reference
ones.
to. Yeah,
so only real ones. It's like X hyphen X exclamation point V quote Q. Or like something like that.
I was like, I'm gonna look this up, but I'm not gonna look it up.
You're like, did he screw up a title? When I sent that title when I sent that album for distribution, they sent me 2 emails like, please check to make sure that all titles and things are submitted correctly, because they were probably like, what the hell does this mean? But anyway, I rapped on that song, and I hadn't released like a rap song in a long time, and it's like all these allusions to like Castlevania, but I never am like, oh yeah, I'm Alucard, I got a sword, I'm coming for Dracula, I'm gonna get yours, you know, like it. That just seems so
a little more subtle,
corny. So so a lot of the stuff I do, like it's clever, you know. It has to like allude to stuff. I have a line where I like say, I have that thing under the cloak, and it was like a reference to you know, Alucard. He opens his cloak and he has a fireball. So I was like, I keep the heat, the heat under the cloak, or like whatever like that. Where it's like with that song, I'm sure like all these allusions also work as like other metaphors or other rap.
Oh yeah, So it's like a triple entendre type situation.
Yeah. So I'm like, you know, it's there for the people that know the game and are like, oh, the heat under the cloak. Oh, he's talking. Oh, but you know,
yeah. If you don't, it still works.
Right. Yeah. That's it. That's the type of like rap game crossovers that I like personally.
So what I'm hearing is that he's cool.
Yeah. I'm pretty.
You're talking. We knew that already. We knew that already. But you're talking to 2 guys who have spent money, bought and traded Space Ghost Coast to Coast albums with each other. So we know a thing or two about corny.
Dude, Zorak is the best, man.
Yeah, all 3 of those albums, like we traded.
Who's your favorite Space Ghost character? Is it Brack?
Brack.
I know his is definitely Brack. I like Space Ghost. I'm always sucker for like the straight man and that type of comedy ridiculousness. Yeah. But also Brack.
I mean,
his voice is just so good.
I was just about to start.
What was that Brack song?
I was just about to spit.
Don't touch me.
Don't touch me.
Yeah. I was just about to spit a couple of lines of Brack's verse.
Don't touch me.
Verse on that one song on the album, but I was like, I don't remember the 3rd line. Like I said, I remember the first, 2nd line. I don't remember the 3rd line. And I was like, I'm not going to embarrass myself right now.
You know these songs too.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So
you know,
I was there.
I was there.
He was there when the deep words were written.
Yeah.
Oh, well, dude, we could talk forever. But we probably end it here.
Yeah.
We'll have to continue it another time.
Dude, I would love to come back. This was so much fun, guys. Like, seriously.
It's great having you. Great having to talk with you more in depth because, I guess we can say it on the podcast before we wrap up. We met at the Smash Brothers tournament that which emceed and hosted and ran.
Yeah, which was incredible. And just real quick, guys, I'm not from Philadelphia. I had alluded to that. And I've lived here for a couple years in the YUNKJunk area. And I have realized like, oh man, I'm going to be here for a while, so I should meet people. I had not played Smash Brothers for more than like a week. I literally bought the game and was like trying to unlock characters so I could know matchups and stuff. I literally played Terry and only Terry because he was the only character I was at all comfortable with. And I was very fortunate enough to meet these guys there, and great community of people, and just really got to know like the area more and had so much fun. It was so much fun. I was like, I'm getting beat by 8-year-olds. I don't even care. We're having a blast. Like, this is so much fun. And if you ever see a tournament run by Chris, make sure you're there because he had a great
He did a great job.
It was a lot of fun. It was so much fun.
I'm sure it was stressful for you.
Oh yeah,
I can see your face
it was
was
a lot of fun,
but I was like,
but we will almost certainly be doing more.
And I'd love to help out like any way I can, you know, if you want a little
we will take
help. Yeah.
And on top of that, like, just getting a community of interesting people together and getting new folks in. And that's something that I know I'm passionate about. Steve and I got some plans with the shop to be more of a hub.
Yeah.
So thanks for being part of the community. Let's keep growing it, right?
Yes. So Really appreciate you guys having me.
We appreciate you stopping by.
Yeah, and thank you everyone for listening. Again, this is Tubby Talk with YUNKJunk, and yeah, we'll see you real soon.
Later, guys.
Take it easy.
YUNKJunk!